You know, when we were in Japan a couple years back, I would have expected to have seen more robots than we saw.
This is the first time I've heard of that. But fair, honestly.
That's true. My name is Eli.
I'm Denise.
And this is Film to Table podcast. We are a side addition to the main podcast of Top Shelf Video.
You missed the chance to say side dish to the main
course. We're the side dish. Yeah, we're the appetizer. Are we?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's more like a special.
Or a dessert.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, that all sounds good. But yeah, we're married. We like to eat food and talk about movies.
That's right.
We saw this movie back in January, actually, as an early screening.
Oh, it's been a minute.
Yeah, it was an early screening at the Alamo Draft House that I had gotten an email for. Maybe it was through Fangoria or something like that, but I remember I told you, I was like, this looks interesting. I was like, we should set aside some time to watch it. And then we just kind of, went and did our thing. Because I remember it was still kind of cold or cool. It was already starting to be summer in January. But yeah, we're talking about the movie Companion, which I hadn't heard anything about it when it was, with regards to last year, the movies being so good last year, then we were both like, I wonder what good movies are going to come out this year. And we didn't really have like a list built up. So I was kind of like, well,
just watch everything.
Yeah, we'll just see what comes at us. And I mean, there were a few things. Like, we definitely had already seen the trailer for Sinners, and not knowing much about that back then, I was like, I whatever that is, I'm going to watch it, 100%, without a doubt. But with everything else, like, there wasn't like a huge, oh man, I can't wait to see this or to see that. I mean, we're not really big. I mean, we watch the Marvel movies, and maybe we'll get around to watching the new Superman movie, but like, we still haven't even seen like the more recent Marvel movies or whatever. And I mean, mostly just because I feel like we had such a good 2024 that it was like, I want more of that. Like, I want to pick back up
we
where
had the
that
taste.
I want to pick it back up where that left off, and I feel like there was potential for a lot of letdowns. So it was like, well, where are all the movies at? Like, I want to know.
Yeah, it's been kind of a slow year compared to last year as far as horror, I feel like.
It's been a little bit slim pickings, but...
Yeah, but the ones that have come out have been pretty good.
Yeah, not to say there's been nothing...
It was just such an embarrassment of riches last year. Like,
well, and I feel like it caught us off guard. We were just like,
yeah,
whoa.
nobody really... Well, it's... all of the... There was a lot of hype over certain movies, and a couple other movies kind of blew it out of the water. And it was just good all around. The movies that would have been like the best movies this year were just kind of like okay last year, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I guess, that's definitely true. Like, they would have didn't make the top list, but kind of came in the alternate versions of, what do you call it? The participation award or whatever. I don't know. All that to say, though, I would say it was a good way to start off the year.
Sorry, it's the cat. All right, it's fine. Everything's fine.
Yeah, I want to say, like, again, kind of not knowing how the year was going to kick off, I was like, well, let's see what this one's all about, even though we didn't know much about it. And what we did know was it had... a couple of actors that have kind of been the new, I don't know. I was thinking about this when we started watching the movie, because like, I didn't want to say they were like, I don't want to say that Sophie Thatcher is a scream queen, because I feel like
she's been kind of cross genre a little bit.
I don't want to like, and I don't think it's like diminishing her work by saying she's a scream queen, but she's definitely been in a lot more horror, science fiction, like drama, like a lot of the things that we like.
Yeah.
So we've seen her a lot. Like, she was in Heretic. We saw her first in Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, she's
like
amazing
2
in it.
or 3 years ago. She was in, like, even though she was in Maxine like just for
just like
5 minutes,
yeah,
she like fits the part like really well. And so like she's just kind of been appearing in a lot of places, but like I said, I don't necessarily think that qualifies her as like some sort of scream queen, but she's definitely like part of this new generation of like young actors that just are kind of they fit it's funny because she fits the genre of like, she looks like she's from the 80s.
Yeah.
So she fits a lot of the movies that,
I can see that. That's a good point.
That we would want to see, right? Even though that's not all she's done.
Like, right. I think it's I think she still has maintained kind of her like a certain look about her that I think unfortunately, as with all of Hollywood, I think everybody's kind of getting a lot of the same stuff done to their faces and to their teeth, and everybody kind of looks the same. And she's still unique looking enough that, I mean, obviously she's very what is it called, just attractive just in general. But like I think she still has enough of a unique look where she could play whether somebody back in the 80s or a companion,
like she could get really dolled up, or she can play like the biker like biker girl, like she kind of does in Yellow Jackets. It's funny you say that because, or about like how like her face, and she's not all done up apparently, and I kind of briefly looked at it, she did have work done to her face because she was in a really bad scooter accident where she apparently like
that's a little
knocked out a couple teeth.
Right. Okay.
And
that's a little different.
Yeah, but I mean, this was like during the Yellow Jackets era, I guess. So it was when she was like, I don't know, this might be my only job. So like, most actors would be like, oh yeah, no, I don't want to take those risks because
my face.
Yeah, if I break my hand, like I'm out of work, or whatever.
That's interesting.
Or they have to work it into they have to work it into the script or whatever. But yeah, apparently she had, because I was gonna say like, when we started watching the movie, and we're talking about Companion for 2025, there's a couple scenes in the movie where she smiles, but her lip kind of does this sort of weird thing.
Oh yeah,
and it was very
it's like a little twitchy kind of.
Yeah, and it was very like apparent.
Yeah.
But then that's when I was flipping through, like before we started recording, I was flipping through some stuff and said like, oh yeah, she had been in an accident, and like I guess that was also part of it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Where like her teeth, like I don't know if it was like her teeth or just a tooth got like knocked out, but also like they had to do a little bit of surgery, I guess, to repair that area. So like maybe the muscle or something in the lip or whatever. But I mean, all that to say, like, yeah, she feels very like somebody that we would all hang out with, right? Like she fits the part of like a friend that's within your friend group, right? Like, and like you said, like very normal, and if she was to get all made up,
I mean, still like super conventionally attractive, obviously, but in I guess in Hollywood terms, she still looks semi-normal, as opposed to everybody that's starting to kind of look the same at this point,
right? And so it's funny because I was I guess this movie's somewhat new, even though it's been about 6 months since this movie came out. So we will talk spoilers later, but in reading, I was thinking about like, how do you describe this movie without not giving away too much? Because I think what makes the movie work pretty well is if you don't really know too much about the movie going into it. I think it definitely helps because we didn't know too much, even though the poster gave away more. Yeah, you kind
of guess at it a little bit.
Yeah, when we were coming into the theater, I remember seeing the poster going, "Oh, well, that seems like that kind of gives away a little bit." But the description on IMDb just says, "A weekend getaway with friends at a remote cabin turns into chaos after it's revealed one of the guests is not what they seem," which is totally true. And to be honest, like when I first watched, or when I saw the poster for this, and when I kind of saw that it was in Fangoria, I just assumed that this was a horror movie.
Okay.
I had no idea that it was actually going to be more of a. It's listed as like comedy, even though like it's a pretty dark comedy.
Dark comedy, I guess. Yeah.
But also listed as like science fiction, which makes sense.
Sure.
And then it does have horror, but I'm not 100% sure like what the horror aspects would be per se. Like I mean, obviously there's like some there's some graphic moments, but I don't think that there's anything that actually qualifies as like would qualify as like horror, you know. But yeah, in any case, so the movie kind of it's funny because this is the second time we've seen it. We just watched it on HBO Max, and in watching it the second time, I want to say when we first watched it, I was like, I really liked that. I liked how it was filmed. I liked the actors. I liked the casting. The set was really cool. You know, the lake house and everything that they're set up in.
Yeah.
And I think I remember us talking about it a little bit briefly, saying like, it felt like a good short story film or short film that was able to be stretched into an hour and a half.
Yep.
In second viewing, I actually think it's better than I remember it being, because maybe it's just because we kind of knew certain things were going to be coming.
Yeah.
But also, like, in listening to the dialogue and understanding, like, what's being said at the very beginning.
Yeah, I agree.
I was like, oh, like, you know.
Yeah.
They're kind of poking fun in it. They're being very clever in a very, like, fun way by some of the dialogue at the very beginning without giving anything away until about 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
I think is when the first reveal kind of happens or whatever. But so yeah, the movie starts with like the I've never understood the term meet cute.
So I think that's I don't know where it started, but it's just in general terms, like in a movie, it's like in a rom-com, like how the two characters end up meeting, and it's it's the meet cute in this movie is they meet at a grocery store, and that's how they meet, and that's kind of it starts the progression of how they fall in love. And
I didn't know if that was like I feel so like old Gen X when I was like, do people actually use that in real life terms?
I don't think there was like a little spate a couple of years ago where people kind of said it in real life, but I think for the most part it's only
it's
in reference to movies for the most part.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, so then I think that it is kind of funny. The movie starts with a meet cute.
Yeah.
Literally, like you said, at a grocery store, and you're hearing the narration of like Iris, which is also I never picked up on until you kind of look at it, but Iris is Siri spelled backwards. So
okay.
Sure.
So
it's funny because it starts with the dialogue of Sophie, Thatcher's character Iris, talking about how and when she met her companion Josh, who's played by Jack Quaid, who again also another one of those actors that's kind of like,
oh, he's in like everything these days. Yeah,
he's really starting to appear in a lot of things. I mean, he's really good, and it's one of those like much like Margot
Robbie?
No, Margaret Qualley.
Oh yeah, Margaret.
Yeah, Margaret
Qualley.
Yeah,
Margaret.
Well, but in any case, like the kids of actor,
gotcha.
Parents that are starting to become more in like the current sphere of like the actors that we're starting to see more and more in front of us.
And I do appreciate, even though they called like I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but they're called like nepo babies because they have all these connections.
Yeah, the nepotism of
you gotta give it to some of these people that even though they do have connections, they're taking pretty interesting swings with like the roles that they pick, and not just staying with something that's like easy or unchallenging for them. I feel like it's I mean Jack Quaid, I think in particular, has made some really interesting like movie role choices, and so
very opposing to what his father's like
that's
views.
True.
And like I would imagine his dad would have not been happy with this movie because he's very on the other end of the spectrum when it comes to like the thought process. I mean, I guess he's a boomer, so he has like he would have a different perspective about this movie. It's just kind of funny too because last night we watched a movie with Maya Hawke.
Oh yeah.
And another nepo baby. But again, like, I think she's fine. Like, I think she's like on her way to probably being like almost a clone of her mom.
They look exactly.
They look almost exactly the same, and
uncanny.
She could play like parts of her mom if she really wanted to.
Yeah, they have similar mannerisms too.
Yeah, and I think that's great. Like, I don't know if we'll have another run of rom-coms where she could fit in there, but in any case, so yeah, we hear about the two of them and the meet cute of how they meet. She narrates an intro that I won't talk about just yet because it kind of gives away a little bit of the story, even though they purposely do that because obviously we literally see this in the first like 3 minutes of the movie, and then we're like, oh, that seems like a pretty big important piece of information.
Yeah.
And so in that sense, it's like, okay, well, I guess we're in for a ride because they've already told us how this is going to end.
Sure.
And so, in any case, it kind of picks up from there because then, you see them on their way to like I guess their automatic car is driving them to some remote, place, which ends up being
a cabin in the woods, basically.
Yeah.
But the nicest possible cabin.
Well, yeah, they say that it's a cabin in the woods, and then when they pull up, it's like, it's like
basically like a mansion.
Yeah,
in the woods.
In the woods, like it's like an amazing like lake house, basically. Yeah. And so we meet up with the rest of the cast of characters, but on the way there, like Iris is talking about her self-doubt about who they're going to meet, and it's like, your friends don't like me, and I'm feeling very nervous, and the character Josh is very like, it's funny because again in the second viewing is kind of like an asshole.
Yeah, but subtle enough that you don't call it out right away necessarily, but yeah, you pick up on some asshole pretty early tendencies,
like almost the like, I mean, we all deal with different things, right? Whether it's like anxiety or this or that or whatever, with regards to meeting new people or like just, I don't know, just the day to day, right? And so she's kind of like talking through this
like
out loud,
her anxieties and stuff,
and he's just
super dismissive.
Yeah, he's very dismissive, but almost like in the first time we watched it, I didn't really pick up on it.
Right, exactly.
Because he was almost acting like, oh, just be more confident, whatever. Yeah. But in second viewing, it was definitely more like, man, he kind of sucks a little bit, And then you don't really pick up on how much he sucks until later, because then when they get there, she is definitely like, yeah, I can't. Yeah. This is going to be really, really hard.
Yeah.
And then he almost gets a little upset of like, wait, you're now just like talking about all this stuff because, I mean, we're right here. We've driven for hours, and now you're just like freaking out, and you could have freaked out earlier before we could have this conversation.
Right.
So he's almost like more annoyed about the inconvenience of having to have that conversation now.
Right.
Instead of actually trying to
you put her at ease or help her out.
Yeah, actually take action to do something about it.
Yeah.
But, they kind of work through it, and, they go inside and they meet everybody else. And so we meet all the other characters, which is Kat. And then we meet Sergey. It's Sergey, right?
Yeah, Sergey.
Sergey, Teddy, and...
Eli.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Played by
Harvey Guillen,
Gizmo.
Who is Guillermo from What We Do in the Shadows TV show, who we love.
Yeah, man, I was always bummed that we didn't get to meet him at Texas Frightmare that one year he came.
Did he come that 1 year?
He came 1 year, but it was like during the pandemic years, and then
that's right.
He may have come the year after, and then we didn't go to that one.
Yeah.
I hope he comes back because I would love to like.
Oh, he's great.
It's one of the few people that I actually would want to meet and chat with a little bit or whatever, just because like, I don't know, he's great in this movie. Like he just kind of picks up where he left off with What We Do in the Shadows, even though he's not playing Gizmo. Like he's playing in what you would like to think is more himself. this just like outlandish kind of gay man who's like just a lot of fun to have in your group of friends. And so we meet everybody, and they're having dinner. And yeah, like from that point forward, like it just kind of seems like one of those like, hey, we're all getting away for the weekend.
Yeah, we're just having
We have
fun.
a friend who apparently has a badass place to hang out. Which
who's insinuated that they like has dubious connections to the
Sergei.
underworld.
Who they do a very good job of stereotyping. Like he's a Russian guy with like a mullet and just kind of
gaudy and
very what do you call, like unbuttoned open shirt, playing a different game than everybody else.
Just kind of gross, like older, kind of greasy man.
Definitely older than everybody, probably.
Right.
Like if everybody's in their mid to late 20s,
then he would be in his
45
40s or
or
50s.
something. Or early 40s, maybe somewhere in there. But you can tell there's a huge age difference, and they're there because it's his badass pad, and he makes it known. He's kind of like, it's all awesome, and everyone's just like, God damn, this is amazing.
Yeah.
And so they have their dinner, and then they kind of everything kind of goes forward from there. So pretty much from this point forward, that we have to kind of have spoilers, because I don't think you can like not speak more about the movie without discussing that a little bit. But basically, from that point, there's a lot of conversation about like it's interesting because everybody's kind of like what is it? Patrick and Eli are partners.
Yes,
they're there together. Mm-hmm. Iris is there with Josh.
And then there's Kat and Sergei.
Yeah, and Kat talks about in a conversation later, privately, how she's talking to Iris about Sergei, and it sounds like Kat is basically the like side
piece.
Yeah, it's a side piece of Sergei, because Iris is kind of asking like, oh, I thought he was like married, and she's like, yeah, he is. And he's like, wait, so you guys don't love each other? Or I don't understand how that works. And she's like, no, I just do what he says. Like, all this stuff that he has is awesome. She
specifically says, like, oh, I'm just an accessory.
Yeah.
Like his latest watch or whatever.
Right. Like, whatever he kind of wants, I'm there to kind of do, but I get all the benefits of getting to use the lake house.
Right.
I'm sure...
all kinds of
luxury
other goods and items and whatever.
And so the conversation kind of happens about how like Iris asks directly, he's like, you don't like me, do you, Kat? Mm-hmm. And she says, it's not that I don't like you, I don't like the idea of you.
Well, she says that you make me feel irreplaceable is how she says it.
Or replaceable.
Replaceable. Sorry. Yeah.
But that's why she says like the thought of you is that you make me replaceable.
Yeah.
And she's like tries to give her the whole like, no, it's you're great and you're a very confident person and this and this and that.
Right.
But then you kind of start to pick up on like the wording in that conversation.
Very specific.
It's very, very
it's
specific.
Very deliberate. Yeah.
About like what she is actually saying.
Right.
And it's not really like said in that moment, because then the next day, so I guess everyone's drinking, has a good time. Everybody goes to bed, and then the next morning, while Josh is dealing with a hangover, he tells Iris that like, hey, why don't you go out to enjoy yourself, have a good time.
Go out to the lake.
It's
a beautiful day.
You take advantage of the day while I...
sleep it off.
Yeah, I'm going to take some aspirin and take a shower and just try to work off my hangover. Mm-hmm. And then within that moment, when she's on the lake, Sergei, like, basically forces himself on her in an apparent, like, sort of, like... I mean, I guess almost like kind of like a rape.
It's not. I think it's
Nothing happens.
Nothing happens, but she does fight him off because
yeah.
he's trying to be handsy and grabby towards her, and he's just very kind of aggressive about it.
Yeah, and then he actually gets like very aggressive, which we do see, which is like he does like, manhandle her in a really rough way, and actually like punches her
right,
and takes her to the ground, and Sergei gets a knife to the neck. And like in the next scene, when we're back in the house, like Iris is just covered in blood.
Yeah.
And then the movie really kicks off, and you're like, oh, maybe this is like a horror movie.
Right.
And then shortly thereafter, we realize, oh, Iris is a robot. Like, because they're able to just shut her off.
Yeah.
I think when I don't know, when we first saw this, like, did you pick up on any of this before, like, we got to that point? Because
so I don't know that I necessarily like. So when I watch movies, I try very consciously to not try to solve it and outwit the movie,
right,
because I just want to enjoy the ride, man. I'm not trying to be the smartest person in the room. So I wasn't trying to solve what was happening. But that at the same time, it wasn't surprising when she ended up being a robot.
Yeah.
For me, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense that it kind of progressed that way. Because like you said, the poster kind of gives it away a little bit.
A little bit.
And I think maybe one of the trailers, I think just flat out shows it, or at least like it clues into it, of like there's something wrong with her.
Right.
In particular, because I think in the trailer, this isn't really a spoiler for about anything, but part of the trailer, it shows like her hand over the candle. So it's obviously like she either can't feel anything, or in my mind, it was either she can't feel anything or she's possessed or something.
I thought she was possessed because on the poster, like you were saying,
I can see that.
The eyes are all white.
Yeah, I figured.
I just assumed that it was possession because it's a classic.
I figured in my mind it could have gone either way, either like some kind of body snatchers thing, or a possession, or a robot thing.
Yeah.
Because like one of my favorite kind of sci-fi movies in the past, I don't know, decade, I guess, was that one with Oscar Isaac in it. Which one was
Ex
that?
Machina.
Ex Machina, which I thought that was not technically, I guess, horror, but it was a really dark sci-fi.
Yeah.
And it kind of, I think for me, it kind of harkens back to that movie.
It's funny because I remember we talked about that too, how this had a lot of similar like feelings of that, except this is like, this definitely is the comedy version.
This is like the pop culture version, like kind of the lighter, less serious.
Maybe the more accessible, because because I feel like Ex Machina was great, but I feel like not enough people watch that movie.
No, yeah.
And I also think
recommend though. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah. Oh, it's an Alex Garland joint.
Right.
But not to like movie shame anybody, but I feel like Ex Machina is maybe a little too smart for some people.
I can see. I mean, I don't know about too smart, but definitely it goes to places in sci-fi that maybe makes people uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I don't like, and this is the more, like you said, this is the more accessible version of it.
This skates that. It's funny because there were moments in this movie where I'm like, it rides that line where I was like, oh, I wish they would talk a little bit more about a certain aspect, and it's like, oh, but then that would be a little too dark, and then that would end up being more like Ex Machina, and it didn't need to be that.
Right.
Not this movie,
because we had Ex Machina.
we already had that movie. But yeah, so we find out she's a robot in this moment,
and I mean it's pretty early on. What is it, like 15-20 minutes into the movie?
It's in the
pretty
first
much
act.
A reveal. Yeah.
I mean it's kind of like the end of the first act, so we're already about like 25, almost 30 minutes into the movie.
Yeah, it's pretty quick into it.
Yeah, and it happens pretty quick. And then it's funny because I remember the first time we watched it, all that dialogue and all that stuff, like it didn't dawn on me thinking back of what they were saying early on, obviously until this time, because I was like, oh snap, like and they talk about the reason why all this stuff happens, and there's like this little flashback. I thought the flashback part was like, I don't know, like when you talk about like rewatchable scenes, like to me,
like their actual meeting.
It seems like the flashback sequence to me seems like that's the short film,
I see that.
And then there's like this. They add, like, if it was a short film, that would have been the pitch with some sort of little weird conundrum that they attach to it. That it's like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh well, then how would you deal with that, right? Because I feel like in some ways this movie you could go super deep, because in the flashback, because he's trying to explain to Iris that, like, you're not real, you're a robot.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I'm not. Like, I have memories.
I can feel.
I remember when we first met.
And, like, she starts crying, and he's like, those tears aren't even real.
Yeah, he's like, no,
it's
this
like
is
wiper
real.
fluid.
Yeah. He's like, I have them, like, top you off with
like
that
during
fluid.
the service check or whatever.
Yeah, and he's like, and all those feelings and stuff you have, like, that's all a program.
It's all a program, yeah.
So it's funny because in watching it, it could be very Matrixy in that point, like, where I was like,
yeah.
Oh, like, is what we are all feeling just like something that's been programmed into us? Because there's that whole what is it that Jaime had? Oh, the Y files, about how, like, some people, like, do
on YouTube.
Yeah, some people do believe that, like, the world we live in right now is a simulation, or it's like the Matrix, right? And there's been those episodes of like oh well, but all this blah blah blah, and it's like, okay, well, that's a little hard to believe, but when the way that they explain in this movie, you're like, oh well, it's it's interesting because they don't talk about the time frame of the movie. Like, what I like about this movie is because it basically only takes place in, like, one location, and you're like, the whole story buildup is really well done.
Yeah.
And we buy into the world very quickly. And even when we're told that she's a robot, it's not, like, far-fetched because...
Yeah.
But there's nothing in the movie that's like, oh, we have flying cars or whatever.
Right. No. It's very... it's, like, very down-to-earth.
Yeah.
Because it kind of establishes it even in the beginning, where they're driving to the house in, like, this automated car.
Yeah, it's like a Tesla
if you can have
car.
One of those, then, like, what's really the next?
Yeah,
like,
how far off
is is it really that illogical to have that as the next step, is to have an automated companion, basically? Right. So I think they did a really good job of establishing, like, we're at least that far into technology, but obviously not far enough to really think about the consequences of having automated companions.
And I find that really intriguing about this movie is, like, that was a really well done first act, because we don't really question anything.
Right. You're not sitting there, like, being like, oh, that's totally unbelievable. That's totally ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't see how that could happen without whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of questions if that was the case.
Yeah.
And then in the flashback, they kind of answer all those questions for you, like, which I thought was very clever. Because he's...
And it's still enough of a suspension of disbelief that you can, like, okay, maybe it's not plausible right now, but you can see how, maybe we're not that far away from it after all.
Because in the flashback, and we won't go into, like, every detail of the movie, but I do want to go into the flashback, because I thought that the flashback was very, like... because you were calling out a lot of things in the flashback, and I was like, oh wow, like, I hadn't picked up a lot on that. But so when he's telling Iris that you're not real, and she's like, no, I remember where we met and how we met.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, I made that up from, like, a series of check boxes that I selected. And he's like, do you really want to know how we met? And so there's a flashback to when he's in his apartment. And I forget the name of the company, but...
Empathics, I think.
Empathics, yeah. So Empathics shows up, and they're like, they have a delivery with this giant coffin, and like, they come to his door, and there's like a small army of people, like, that come in. Like, there's a guy who I guess is, like, the supervisor, comes in with, like, a tablet that he's, like, holding, like...
It's all the paperwork.
Yeah,
it's like legal.
Yeah,
basically.
It's like an order... Like an order,
it's an invoice.
Yeah, it's like an invoice, but like, it's on a tablet. And then one guy's, like, got the coffin, which has, like, Iris in it. And then he's about to close the door, and then, like, another
the wardrobe,
two guys comes in.
Yeah,
with
the wardrobe guy comes in.
And he's like, oh, sorry. And it's weird because it feel like we've had that happen with our TV. Like we had a TV delivered here, and it's very like, where do you want it? And like, here, then sign this paperwork. Like it was very like the way that whole sequence plays out, even though like it could have been a throwaway scene. Mm-hmm. They do a really good job of setting up that this, like you said, this could very much happen. Yeah. And it could be as easy as buying a TV and having it delivered to your house. Right. Like it's so throwaway.
Yeah, it's so matter of fact. But they make it like a really memorable moment of the film.
Like they could have made a big deal out of it, but instead it's the whole thing was just as easy as, oh, so you bought a new TV. Here are your terms and services,
right?
With our company, Here is the agreement for this. If you want to turn it off, cycle, like that's how you, which is all stuff that I would, like again, like, you buy a TV and it's like, oh, how do you power cycle it?
Yeah,
and it's like, oh yeah, you hold this down for like 10 seconds and oh, if you do this and that, and if you have any questions, you can always call, like whatever. Like it's very like we care because you spent a lot of money, but
but also
only care enough to give you,
as long as you sign here, then whatever.
As long as you don't cause too much of an issue for us right now, then we're all good.
Yeah,
and so they do it very matter of fact, but the way the guy talks about it in very matter of fact, he's like, yeah, you can change the eye color, you can change the language. You can change the intelligence.
Yeah.
And he's like, but due to like regulations, government regulations and da-da-da-da, like he's like, obviously they can't be any smarter than, like 100% is equivalent to like a Ivy League.
Genius, like basically.
Well, no, because
is that what he said?
No, because I think that what he's getting at is like, they can't be, basically we don't want to give you the Terminator. So like,
oh, gotcha.
So he's saying like at 100%, he's like it's as smart as like an Ivy League college student.
Okay.
And then he's like, and 0 is basically just the sex doll that you bought.
Yeah.
Like it's dumb as rubber.
Yeah, it's basically like an appliance.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, just in that little like dialogue and all that execution of just that little short back and forth. Like you get a real sense of like, oh, okay, this is a very believable world.
Yeah.
We don't seem that far away from all this, like sort of kind of happening. There's so much information in that sequence, in that flashback.
Yeah.
Like you called out in the apartment in particular.
Yeah, his apartment is just, there's nothing in it. It's like bare bones, unfurnished, like, like a first time bachelor pad basically, where obviously all he's doing in there is like playing video games and going to sleep and I don't know, jacking off, I guess. But that's literally like there's nothing on the walls, and it's like there's a TV and like a couch, and that's it. There's like not like a bunch of shit on his like coffee table, and it's like it's very sparse, and you kind of get the idea of like, oh, this is just a guy with. It's not like he doesn't have unlimited funds, and that's how he got this robot.
Right.
It's actually alluded to towards the end of the film that he doesn't even own her. He's basically just renting out this service essentially.
But I think it's funny because there is a lot in the set dressing there, in that like, even though they don't show a whole lot, like clearly you can tell he has money or comes from money. Because I mean, he's driving what appears to be a Tesla type vehicle.
That is true. He has a nice car.
When they come to the apartment, like, and I know this is like a minor detail, but like when they come to the apartment, the door is super nice, and like the numbers on the outside of the door are also like super nice. So like it's one of those, I guess, what like in Dallas you would be like an uptown apartment, which is you're talking about like maybe like $3,000 a month for an apartment. Right.
Like not a shabby apartment, but like he obviously hasn't, I mean, like I said, he's like a bachelor. It's like a bachelor pad. He hasn't gone out of his way to, really style it out or make it homey or anything. But I think
that's more because he's like, oh, like it's more so speaking about him, which he gets to later at the end of the movie of like, oh, woe is me.
Yeah.
Because like I said, if you look around, like just based on the apartment, it's a nice apartment, but like you said, it lacks character because of him.
Right.
Not
exactly.
because this is his first.
It was definitely like a deliberate choice to show the kind of character that he is.
Right. It's not because he doesn't make enough money. It's more because that's him.
Yeah.
It's not his first apartment. This is probably his.
Yeah.
Like, whatever, and he's probably somebody who makes pretty good money because he's
right.
Like
it's not like he's just out of college.
Right,
like
right.
his like at least the age range that we've been like it looks like he's not fresh graduate or anything.
Yeah, no, he looks like he's latter 20s. Probably has been working in a corporate job maybe for like you know, 6 or 8 years or whatever. And I only think that because if like I get like you were calling out and I started looking around going like, oh yeah, like there's like what do you call them, the TV tray, like kind of tables that are made out of wood, and there's just like stacked like Chinese like takeout boxes and stuff, and like but the TV has like two big giant like speaker, like the money is being put into the entertainment and not into himself or like anything else, or whatever. And again, like they don't go into the specifics, but I would imagine even if you are renting a robot that can do all these things, I mean, you're talking like
probably not cheap,
thousands of dollars a month.
Sure.
Probably like twice the amount of whatever you're paying for that apartment. You know? But I like how the movie doesn't really get into all those particulars, right? Like
no, they don't, and I think that's kind of its strength. It's not trying to explain everything. It's just like this is what's going on now, and like you accept it or you don't.
Let's just put you into the scenario.
Yeah. So here we go.
Yeah. And so like it turns out. I think what's kind of funny is like so the whole ploy was it turns out that like Josh and I love the way that Gizmo puts this, but he jailbreaks Iris the same way that you jailbreak a phone, like an iPhone, because with the iPhone you can't just use it as is. You kind of have to jailbreak it in order for it to be used, in outside
ways.
well, just to even be like sold to somebody else or whatever.
Sure.
But so it's just kind of funny that like Gizmo is the one. He's like, did you jailbreak like your robot?
Yeah.
Or your sex robot? Because everybody after that point starts calling her a sex robot.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's kind of what she is, and it's almost like. You kind of start to feel like he's like, oh yeah, she tags along because I'm just not going to leave my sex robot at home. Like, it's like,
it's gross.
She's like my partner, but I kind of want her around, but I don't.
Right.
And then that's when you start thinking back to the opening sequence.
Where
he's kind of like, oh, just fucking deal with it because you're a robot.
Right. Like he's so dismissive because he genuinely just does not give a shit about her.
Right. Which kind of is funny because I think we'll get to this to a minute more about his character and like that trope now of those characters, because like even like for people that don't like appreciate, like the things that they have, like I mean it's funny because like we do, but at the same time like we're not so hyper delicate with them that we're like, oh, you can't touch the fridge.
Right.
It's like it's a fridge, like we need to use it.
Yeah.
But we also like want to take care of our things, so like. We don't treat it like badly.
Yeah.
And I think for like people like you and I, like we don't treat like our cars like they're just vehicles. Like I like it's like, oh, let's try to, make sure that we clean them and we stay on top of them.
Just take care of them. Yeah.
But it's not like they have like an actual like soul or like they're not a being.
They're not talking back.
Right. But we also like try to like. And maybe sometimes that's like a bad trait to have, but like, we're animal people. And so like everything has like a little bit of like something to it, right? That we try to treat it with a little bit more respect. Whereas like clearly this movie is kind of talking about how people, given an opportunity with your phone, as an example, it's like, oh, you see people walking around with a cracked like screen and all these, like they just like, it's like, why don't you get it fixed? Like, you know what I mean? And it's like, it doesn't cost that much to like fix it. And that's your phone. Like, it's yours. You should take care of it. It's like,
too, though, I think, I mean, it's kind of an important distinction, too, is that like in this movie, yeah, you can, I guess, kind of equate her to something like a phone or an appliance. But at the same time, she's given full appearance and full range as if she were a person.
Right.
I mean, if we are walking around the house, like giving, talking baby talk to the dogs or singing to the cats, like I can't think of treating any, even like a robot person, like less than as if how we would, how well we treat our animals. You know what I mean? Like, so the fact that he's shitty to his sex bot means
Right.
he's shitty.
Right. Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't,
that's what I'm
like,
saying.
it almost doesn't, yeah, it almost doesn't equate that, like, oh, maybe he's shitty about his appliances or whatever, but, like, it's almost like that doesn't matter. He's shitty to this thing that is essentially a person.
Right.
And he's shitty to that because he knows he can be.
Right.
So it's he's just a shitty person in general.
Yeah, and I feel like that's like I think like I said, we'll circle back around to that in a moment because that kind of comes up at the very end, and I want to talk about the end because in the second viewing I had like different feelings about something towards the second going, but so basically the whole movie, it turns out like they jailbreak Iris because they specifically wanted to kill Sergey because Kat knew that he had $12 million in just straight up cash
like
in the house.
Yeah, just a safe full of cash, like
Right.
cold hard cash.
And so like she has convinced Josh to be like, hey, let's get the robot to kill Sergey. We'll just say that your robot went haywire.
Yeah.
And like the cops will show, they'll get rid of the robot and
Free and clear.
yeah, we're all free and clear, and
Yeah.
we'll split the money.
Yeah.
Between the two of us, and so that doesn't play out the way they think it does. We won't get into all the specifics so you can watch the movie, but like it is just kind of funny because like it also goes to speak to how shitty Josh is because he didn't really think through everything.
He just sucks.
He just he just surface level was like, okay,
this should work out.
I'll go through with that plan.
Yeah.
I'll put a knife in her pocket and she'll use it. And,
Yeah.
and like I'll jailbreak it so that her aggression setting. Oh, that was the thing. I guess that we should probably mention in the flashback, which this is how they justify everything. In the flashback, the guy's like saying like, oh yeah, like you can make her as smart as somebody who's Ivy League, or you can make her as dumb as, just
Factory settings.
a dumb sex robot. And he's like, but they can't hurt you. They're
Yeah.
programmed to not hurt you or any companion or really any human
Yeah.
because, and he kind of almost alludes like, because you don't want the robot uprising.
Yeah, you don't want Skynet to happen.
Yeah. And so he sort of like just
and also importantly, they're also not aware that they're robots.
right. And he's like, yeah, and there's like a factory reset if you ever need to use that or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's like, everything's controlled to the phone. And if you have any issues, you just let us know.
Yeah.
And so that obviously comes into play because by him jailbreaking the robot, that is, I mean, and it's funny because they use that analogy in the sense of like, you do that with anything, like a PlayStation or a phone or whatever.
Uh-huh.
If you add software or change the firmware in any way, you invalidate.
Yeah,
like,
you void the warranty basically.
You void the warranty, but also like the warrant. Well, not just warranty, but like the what do you call it? The user agreement.
Uh-huh.
And the user agreement a lot of times is like, you can't sue us if you add stuff to your like your iPhone and you overheat it and your house burns down.
Right.
Because if we find out that you did that, then you are liable, not us.
Yeah.
Like, so there's a lot that you really should read in whenever you get the user agreement, because a lot of times also it's like, hey, if we add AI to our device or do a whatever, you agree that we can put AI on this and da 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 da, And so like, again, like by him jailbreaking it, you quickly immediately are like, oh, okay, that's going to fuck up a lot of stuff. So he's going to have to like wipe, he's going to have to wipe the computer, in this case, like Iris clean so that she has no idea, but it doesn't play out that way. And then Eli, who's there also, is like, wait a minute. Because then he realizes what's happening. And he's like, wait a minute. So why am I here? And he's like, oh, well, we needed like somebody to
like
vouch.
Basically like a plausible witness.
Right. And that would be you. And he's like, oh, so like we're like a shill. And he's like, yes. But now that you know, we'll get you in on the cut. So we'll cut it 3 ways. And it's funny because then he's like, don't you mean like 4 ways? Because it would be...
are you going to do the spoiler?
Yeah.
I feel like this is a pretty big spoiler.
Well, okay. So anyway, so basically like they need to, Iris has gotten away because Josh is an idiot and didn't really think through this whole scenario.
Yeah.
Iris gets away with Josh's phone, which is how she is controlled. And so like I love the whole sequence of when she gets away, she now has access to herself. She realizes that Josh only made her 40% intelligent.
Right.
And she is like, oh man, like
you suck.
Yeah, that says another thing about you of like how you see women.
Yeah.
And so she obviously kicks it up to 100% so she can think through the scenario. So she's trying to get back just away, tries to get back home. And then Josh and gang are trying to basically catch her before she gets away. A couple things more like sort of ensue in the sense of like trying to track her down to the woods. It's just very Yellow Jackets of her. Because she's like running through the forest like barefoot.
Yeah.
She's all covered in blood. And she's like very athletic. Like, I mean, just based on the way like seeing her run and seeing her like go through the motions of like, you know, I guess like actors would say that is stunt performing, you know, whenever you have to run around and do things and whatnot. But like, I mean, it's very believable, which is great. There's like a whole sequence where she almost gets away, but then they end up getting the robot Patrick to help out. So, well, you know, like I said, I don't know. I guess at this point, I've already said spoilers like a while back. So there's really not much we can say about that because I think that it's funny because Patrick turns out to be a robot as well, which is kind of a bit of a twist. But that's an important part because Patrick is now the only, because even I thought when we saw it in the theater, I was like, how are they going to catch a robot? Like, that's not really plausible at that point. It's like, oh, well, another robot. We'll catch a robot. And I'm like, oh, shit. I guess that makes sense. Like,
well, it was also kind of an interesting subversion to what you kind of assumed the movie was saying, right? Because, and not that it wasn't saying it, but it was basically talking about how this, you know, mediocre dude had to pay for a companion, and that's the only way he could get a girlfriend because he sucks. But it kind of subverted that context to like, well, now Eli has a companion, and he has him because it turns out that he just wants to be with somebody. So I thought that was an interesting kind of subversion to the idea that like, oh, only dudes that hate women or can't deal with real women would get a companion.
Right.
It was an interesting kind of mirror to what Josh ended up being. Because, I mean, yeah, Eli did end up being kind of shitty because he also wanted the money at the end of the day. But he didn't have a companion just so he could have, like, a, you know, maybe it started as, like, a sex bot, you know what I mean? But, like, they make a point to say that Patrick is an older model. So he's had Patrick for, like, much longer than Josh has had Iris. And it's because he's basically, like, fallen in love with his robot. Yeah, so I think it was an interesting kind of, I don't know, flip side of the coin between the kind of like men that they are.
Well, yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up because like I think it says a ton. I mean, I agree with you, but also I kind of disagree in that it's still focused on Josh because they are saying that you can be somebody who actually cares and don't have to be shitty the way that Josh is because before like there's like well, I won't give away that twist or that moment, but there's a moment where like Eli and Patrick are talking because they're talking about what is happening and why they're chasing after Iris. And he's like saying, I would never do that to you. Like I would never I would never jailbreak you and use you.
Yeah.
In a ploy to get money.
Right.
Right. And like Patrick picks up on that and says like, wait, you wouldn't do
what now?
You wouldn't do what? And he's like, nothing. I'm just saying like if you were a robot, I wouldn't do that to you. And then it's funny because then Patrick's like, yeah, I know that I'm a robot.
Right.
And I think that in itself says a lot about the character, the Eli character, because
you're right.
He's basically saying like, you've nurtured it. It really is the nurture over
nurture versus nature.
Yeah, of like Patrick is a much more like he is the perfect companion, but only because he is giving what he is wanting back to reciprocate.
Oh.
And Josh he's a piece of shit. Like the only thing he cares about is clearly himself yeah. and very little. So he's not really giving much. And so she is basically like, and not to get super dark, but it almost feels like I will maybe discuss a little bit more towards the end of like toxic relationships and stuff like that, because I feel like that is only what he has been giving, which leaves the partner with nothing to work with, right? Like
right.
a companionship should be between two people
yeah.
that work off each other. And, it'll never be perfect, but, you give a little bit and the other person like takes it and then they give and if it works, then, there's a connection and there's a bond. But since he gives so little, there's nothing for her. So like when she talks, it almost sounds a little self-centered when she's like, when we met, it was so perfect. Like the way she talks about it, it's almost like, oh, dude, get over it. But it's almost because that's nothing really all she has.
Which is like a fake memory.
Right. And so like...
There's nothing about like, oh, they go on nice dinners or
right.
they hang out and do stuff together.
Her obsession with him is only because...
that's a good point.
She has
nothing... It's all fabricated.
Right. She has nothing to work against except for what she's been programmed with, whereas a little bit earlier, there's a sequence where Patrick and Eli are talking, and they're talking about like a recent, or they were talking about how they met as well, right? Uh-huh. But it just like the way they communicate and the way they do it together, like they talk about how they met together in a way that it's their story and not just his story. Whereas like with Iris, it's her story, and he's like, "How can I forget how we met?" And
he's like, "Oh yeah, oranges, yeah."
Right, but he doesn't like
he doesn't care.
Right,
like he knows like the basic layout, but for her, it's like everything.
Yeah, and so I thought that was really interesting, like you were saying, because you have these two opposing like characters.
But I think too, it's funny in the storytelling because even though they approach their companionships differently, they still end up both being kind of shitty people.
Oh yeah. No. Yeah, I'm not saying that.
Which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Eli's like by any ways like
upstanding citizen.
Yeah, but I think it's just more what would you do if you were given the opportunity for $4 million? And right. It's like, okay, well, I guess
I'm gonna take it.
I guess I'm not getting out of this anyway, so I guess I'm in on this, right? And he's a little flamboyish, and who couldn't use an extra $4 million? So, right. So yeah, it's funny because she gets tracked down. And it sort of plays out in the end where he is going to set it up so that now that she's been caught, he's going to just, hey, I'm going to call the company. They're going to come. They're going to reset her. I'm just going to say that she went nuts and killed all these people.
Right.
And just be like, I don't know what happened. I'm lucky to be alive.
Yeah.
And that's, again, he's such an idiot because he thinks that would work.
That's going to work. Yeah.
And be like, yeah, well, let's go with that one.
Yeah.
And so that almost, no,
there's no way it was going to work.
There's no way that was going to work, even though that's how the scenario plays out. And they do come to take her away. And I do love that when they do come, like the Best Buy guys
What is it?
The Geek Squad.
Geek Squad.
The Geek Squad comes to pick her up, and they're talking through with it, and it sounds very much like, I can only imagine like somebody comes and picks up an expensive TV that isn't working.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, I don't know. I was just watching it, and I was watching on this particular Blu-ray player, and I don't know what happened.
It just turned off.
And and smoke came out of the back, and
I don't know, it's really weird.
I don't know. It was just weird. But if you could take it away, I could imagine people going like, yeah, he probably
fucked around with it.
Yeah, he probably,
broke it somehow.
Put some firmware or something on it and tried to like jailbreak out like to get a high refresh rate or something and just overheated it or whatever. And so like, I like how Josh is giving the explanation of what happened, and he's like, does that sound right? Does that sound right? And then like he's like, yeah, dude, we're not here to like solve any crimes. We're here to like
just pick up this defective
the robot and take her away. But sure, like, and you can tell. And I love that when they are outside, and the two of them, what was it? It was Teddy and I forget who the other guy's name is.
I can't remember.
But he's like, it was Sid. I think it was that guy, Sid and Teddy, and he's like, so what do you think happened? And he's like, oh, he 100% jailbroke that. And he's like, you think so? And he's like, oh, dude,
obviously
happens all the time. And when you think about it, like that is the majority of consumers, right? Is like, you give them something, and then it's like, just make sure you don't do A, B, and C. And then the first thing that people do is like A, B, and C.
Like,
and
don't press the shiny red button. Yeah. Immediately press the shiny.
Yeah, and that's what they want. So yeah, they basically say that like, yeah, I'm pretty sure he jailbroke. And then like, they're in the van, and that's when he's like saying like, oh yeah, dude, he's like, people jailbreak these things all the time. And then it gets like, it starts to get kind of dark in my opinion, because he's like, yeah, people like, jailbreak these things all the time because they either want to tie him up or keep him in a dungeon.
Oh yeah, that was weird. Like,
which again, it's like, you want it to be like a comedy, but then you're like, oh yeah, like
people are shitty.
I could totally see people.
People do that to real people. So why wouldn't they do that to robots?
That's exactly why I was just like, oh, like, and throughout that whole sequence, actually, I think it was actually before that sequence happens, but when Josh wakes up Iris and he's having like a really nice dinner in front of her and is explaining to her how like she's a robot and she's nothing but a robot.
Yeah.
And she's really nothing, because I guess this is before he turns her intelligence down, which I guess he had forgotten to do. She's being very like, oh yeah, you're just like, you're pretty pathetic.
Yeah.
Like all the things that I have picked up on while I've been your companion, of like how you're pathetic. You blame the world for like the fact that you can't meet a woman.
Yeah.
You just make up all these excuses, blah, blah, blah. I mean, basically that's like an incel, really, right? Like, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of towards the end there. I feel like, they went a little heavy-handed on that kind of messaging towards the end there, as far as like, this is what these guys are like.
They do, yeah.
But at the same time, it's not wrong.
No,
so,
and I actually kind of...
Unfortunately, like, it should be a caricature, but it's not.
It's not.
In this day and age, unfortunately. So yeah, even though like it feels odd, knee-jerk reaction for me, like it felt heavy-handed in that she was calling him out for being like a pathetic sad sack of like, you're what, you're a cis straight white male in this world where everything is made for you, and you're gonna cry about how like, oh, I deserve more, and so you buy yourself a sex bot basically that you don't even bother connecting with, because whatever, you just use her for sex. It's funny, like they call all of this out, and at first glance for me it felt very heavy-handed, because it's like, here we go, like here's the messaging that could have maybe worked in a little bit more subtle, or like it didn't have to be spelled out like that.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, no, this is really how people talk now in all these forums and all this fucking manosphere bullshit on podcasts.
Yeah.
So like, unfortunately, you do have to spell it out because people have had that spelled out to them and they believe it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And so in second viewing, I actually did like it. That it is called
I
out.
do too.
And I actually like I like it because he gets his comeuppance and he deserves it.
Yeah.
And I don't think anybody could say he does not deserve it. And if they do, then they're basically a Josh.
You missed the whole point. Of
Yeah,
the
then
movie.
you are like a Josh in this movie of like, oh, you're one of those types of people. Like,
yeah, you're exactly like him.
And it's funny, like maybe it's extreme to say like they're like the new Nazis that we would have like in movies where it's like, you need a villain. And it's like, oh, well, there's your villain because...
Here's an incel.
Yeah, because there's a lot of them.
Because they suck.
Yeah, and they do suck, and they deserve their comeuppance.
Yeah.
But I actually kind of like that because it does tie a lot of the things throughout this movie of like, that is the horror element that was kind of there. It's like, oh man, there are people like that. And, you know, that's where I feel like this straddles that line because he gets really aggressive with her and tosses her around the room, and he talks about how she is like, he's almost saying the stuff that he would say in a domestic like abuse partnership
in an incel forum.
Yeah, but actually taking that on her, where
right.
he's like throwing her around, saying like you're not intelligent.
You're nothing to me. Yeah.
Well, he like says the things of like, I control how intelligent you are. I control like
right.
But like he does literally in
because she's a robot.
Because she's a robot. But I think that is very like metaphoric to like,
oh sure,
like the abusive relationship. And if it's not for the fact that I control the little switch here of when you can leave and when you're not allowed to leave, then that's when that, you know, like I have the control. And when in reality, you know, he doesn't.
Right.
And he never really did, even though like he thinks he does. But what I love too is like, when it all plays out and he has her eliminated by her intelligence and stuff is like taken out, she shoots herself in the head at the end and takes herself out, and he's like, oh yeah, I can explain this away to the Geek Squad. But what I love about that is like the Geek Squad shows up and they're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna take her away, and he's like, we're gonna take it back. And the legal department will need to scrub it down so they get all the hard drive data and all the stuff.
Footage.
Basically, we're going to check our terms and services since people died here. Like, we have to do our legal due diligence. And, of course, him being the dumbass is like, oh, well, that seems like that would be pretty impossible, right? Because
she shot
herself in the head where the eyes and the camera...
Where the brain is.
Where the brain is and where everything's stored. And they're like, oh, yeah. No. He's like, we don't keep the hard drive up there. Like, we wouldn't do that. That's stupid. Like, we're like, it's almost like he's like saying, like, we're engineers. Like, we're smarter than that.
Right.
And he's like, oh, no. He's like, once we get all the hard drive and stuff off, you know, they'll be in touch with you or whatever. And you can see the look on his face of like, I'm a smart man. And then it's like, oh shit.
Oh,
like,
I am not a smart man.
I am not a smart man. and I'm about to like be found out. And so, the movie kind of ends. I mean, I guess, you know, we can go through the whole spiel, but like basically, you know, that's not how it ends. Like, Iris is able to circle back around. And the movie ends with her basically just taking off with all the money. Because basically everybody's dead. Yeah. Except her. She's taking off with all the money, and I guess she's going to go experience
whatever she wants.
Yeah, whatever, like, it's funny because she talks about that from the beginning in the narration where she talks about like the two most like
it's like she says about how it feels like don't you feel like a lot of times you're always in darkness and you don't know what you're supposed to be doing and what your purpose is in life. And she said for her, the two times where she was pulled out of that darkness was the first one when she met Josh, and the second time was when she killed Josh.
Yeah.
Which I thought was such a funny, like, I don't know, it's just such a great, like I said, like, metaphorically speaking, like, it's not it's not super subtle, obviously, like to work out what she means and what she's trying to say and what the movie is trying to convey.
Yeah.
But it makes it for such a fun viewing, I think, especially the second time around, actually.
Yeah.
Like I said, the first one was a little, for me, it was a little off-putting how like on the nose everything was towards the end. But on the second viewing, it's like, oh, I see what you're saying. Like, I see what you're trying to get at, and it's super effective, I think, actually. Because initially I was like, that's so like, blah, like, obviously he's the bad guy, la la la. But then it's like, the more you've heard about, especially in this political climate, unfortunately, the more you hear about that kind of stuff is literally being like peddled around on internet forums and podcasts. It's like, oh, fuck, this actually is the way a lot of people think, unfortunately.
And that's why it's fun to see like him get his comeuppance. Yeah. Because you would love to see that more. But I also think, in a way, I think it's also like you were saying, metaphorically, it's also like good messaging for like, get out of a toxic relationship. Like, maybe not murder. don't do that. But like, break away when it's like,
when you realize,
when it's not obvious, right? Like, and I think like this movie does a really good job of just like, we're almost like the additional like viewer at the lake house, because like even though Kat, who developed this plan, even she's like kind of, she doesn't like when she's talking to Iris earlier in the movie about how like, you would replace me, like she feel like she's almost like saying like now it's women already have it hard enough that we're not like I don't want to like say like women should support women, because you should, but it's more like she's almost saying like yet one other thing that's going to get taken away from us is now robots.
And that's so a good point, actually.
So like, I don't think that that's like a bad thing that she's saying, as much as like she's like, we already are having to deal with like the beauty aspect and all these other things, and then we have to break through to a Josh type character who can't even like take care of themselves.
Yeah,
like we have less options. Like things are just getting worse and worse.
That's so interesting. That's actually true, and it's such a small moment between the two characters, but that's totally true. Like, they don't really talk about it that much, because I think, although I feel like that could have been like an extended scene or something, maybe chopped off somewhere. But that's such a good point that, the other aspect of it, of being just women in this world, of like, if you're young enough, if you're desirable enough, like how you climb the social ladder, or how you get companionship, even, like what all that means. And because obviously she doesn't really like Sergei, but she likes the lifestyle, and how else is she gonna get what she wants if she doesn't put up with a gross man like that? You know what I mean?
Right. And and she talks about when Sergei gets killed, and they were like, oh wait, he was like a drug dealer, right? And she was like, no, he just sucked. He just sucks. Like, he's married, cheated on his wife, and
he's a bad boyfriend.
Yeah, he's a chauvinist. Like,
yeah.
All these things where we're like somebody at the camp or at the lake house with them, of like, do you not see like how bad these people are? Like,
right.
And like good-hearted people being like manipulated by, I guess, like, almost like, manipulated because it's like that's what we've been programmed to do, right?
Right.
It's like you got to find the guy with the money and the nice lake house or whatever.
Exactly.
And I think that's why Gizmo and Patrick, like, it really works, because it's like, oh, they're like,
it never talks about whether like Gizmo is rich or
but you get this insinuation that he's not, right? Because they talk about, he's like, you should have upgraded your robot by now.
That's true.
And even at the end, the one Geek Squad guy, he's like,
oh, that's
like a model that we've discontinued.
We don't even have that model anymore.
Yeah, and so like,
that's such a good point.
He's like the guy that, like, I have this old flip phone.
Whatever, it works.
Because it works for me, and I care about my flip phone, and everything I have means something to me.
I would have kept my flip phone if I could have.
Oh yeah, and so like, I thought that was kind of interesting, and I feel like what I like the most about this movie is that I feel like it's smart in a way that's accessible, but it allows us to talk about these things, because
it's so interesting, because like everything that you've said, kind of has me chewing on it a little bit more because yeah, you're right. On surface level, it is entertaining and like the message is very obvious. But the more you kind of chew a little bit on the characters, it's like, oh, there's actually a lot of stuff going on down there.
And I like that.
Yeah.
I like. That's why I was like, man, we gotta get back around to watching this one because something resonated with me when we first watched it, and I couldn't put my finger on it right away. Because I remember us saying, like, man, that was a great science fiction movie, and we need more.
We need more of that.
We need more science fiction movies, but at the same time, like, as much as I like Ex Machina, we're probably due for a watching of it. Like, it's very, like, it's intense to a point where, like, you don't...
It's hard to rewatch.
Right. Whereas this one has lots of moments where you could rewatch it and have, like, a good laugh with it. But also, like I said, there is, like, a seriousness tone of it, but... The casting is so well that you love Gizmo, you love the Geek
Everybody's
Squad guys.
super charismatic, and they walk that really fine line of being like, just maybe like almost too like cheesy and corny.
Right.
But I don't know. It's like
but they're playing the part that a lot of us, or not a lot of us, but people was like, well, I have to have this and I have to have that.
Right.
And it's like it's a false front for like just not being yourself. And in a way, like, again, not to go back to the whole, like, this is all a simulation. It's like, but you're programmed to want to believe that, like, love actually exists out there in a way that, the way that she, you know, sort of describes how it happens and all these things. And I think, like, maybe that does happen, but I think that's why it's like a movie trope.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, you bump heads at the grocery store and, like, all of a sudden we're in love.
We're in love.
Whereas, like, you know, you and I had to feel each other out and be like, you want to go watch a Korean
a Korean horror movie that we both hated. Or do you want to go to the Asian
Film Festival? And it's like, do you want to go to a horror con? Like, you know, there's a little bit of a... There's
like a dance.
There's a dance, you
know.
Yeah,
it's not an immediate meet cute for most of us.
Yeah. Maybe, and like I said, maybe it does happen, but I think this movie kind of, like, does the whole, like, it's a trope.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how often that actually happens. Right. Or if it happens and it works out. Where it's like, oh, it is a meet cute. And it's like, yeah, and he's a good looking guy, but it turns out he sucks.
Yeah.
But, you know, we met like in a very cutesy way.
Yeah.
And he's got an okay job and da-da-da.
So that means we have to be in love.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's actually, I really like this kind of breakdown because, you'd given me a lot to think about.
It's funny because
like, it's so entertaining in itself already as a movie. But thinking about it a little further down the line, actually, it actually is saying a lot of stuff about like companionship and romance and like idealized romance, basically, and what it means to be in love or what it means to just be possessive,
right? Or when your personality is built through the community around you instead of through your own actions, right? Should I do this because that's what I'm programmed to do,
right?
Or am I doing, you know, sort of what I want to do? Because by the end, it turns a little ex machina, right? Which is, do you have a soul, or like,
sure,
you know, like we treat our refrigerator nice because in order for it to actually work well for us, we have to be like, hey, you know, I'm going to clean you up and keep you clean and
be really nice.
And you know, and the machine will be like, hey, you know what? In return, I'm gonna give you a little 2 degrees of extra coolness, like you know. And some people may think that, and you always hear that too, like where it's like, oh, I always sometimes, you know, I'll shine the wheels or give a little extra.
You gotta pat the dashboard a little bit, so he'll, you know, she'll start up nice and
treat me well or whatever,
right?
And so I feel like it's like a breakdown of a lot of that kind of stuff, and I like that because I feel like, like I said, I feel like I think in Ex Machina, if you were to compare the two movies, like that one puts a lot of care into like more the question to you of like, what would you do and how do you define like certain aspects of like what it means to be, like just a thing.
Yeah.
And can a robot be a thing? Can a human be a thing on the same level? And here, I don't really think it's that as much as it is just more like, what does it say about you and your respect to like the outside world, like, you know, like how you put things out and how that reciprocates back to you. And then, like, if your refrigerator could take off and be like, you know what? I had a great time. You guys have been great to me. I'm going to go see what's out there because I'm just kind of interested. And that's kind of how the movie sort of ends of like there's not like a, oh man, does she have a soul? Does she have this or that?
Yeah, it doesn't really go that deep into it.
No, it doesn't need to. All that she does know though is that there's more than just Josh.
Right.
And she may not need another companion again.
Yeah.
But she can make her own feelings and whatever.
Yeah, now she gets to discover all of that.
Right, and she can make her own map and her own, like...
I hope our refrigerator never leaves us.
Yeah. No. I like our refrigerator. It keeps our leftovers in good shape. Speaking of leftovers...
Wow. It's the first good segue we've had.
Here's a real tricky one, because I remember when we were... when did I tell you? I was like, we should watch this one again. But then I was like, but I want to give you some lead time, because was it when we were at lunch today?
We might, yeah, I think so.
And I was like, oh, we just need some lead time, because I'm a little stumped on this one of like what I think I have something.
Okay.
But I think you're gonna have to go first, because I have to kind of develop it a little bit. But
okay.
I have a thought on what I think would work with this. But this is, again, more like not a pairing that goes well with this as much as it is more like an experience that I guess maybe I could attach to this. But do you have...
I do, actually. It's a little obvious. But I will say in one of... I'm going for a surf and turf, which is a dish that's usually... both seafood and meat together on one plate.
Okay.
So the seafood aspect is going to be the scallops, because Patrick is cooking scallops the first night that they're there.
Hands.
Yeah, his scallop hands, so he can't shake anybody's hands.
Is that a thing? Is he
what?
just... Are scallops like...
I mean... No,
just
like
dirty?
No,
I don't know. I don't understand the whole scallop hands. I guess he was just being cute.
No. Eli doesn't eat seafood. That's why he's asking.
I mean, I eat when you make.
No, I know. I you don't cook it, I guess is what I mean.
I've had scallops. I think you've had
Have you had scallops?
And I think you made them.
Maybe.
And it was maybe when we went to Bouillon.
Maybe. That sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. No, I mean, it's just like when you're processing crab or shrimp, like, yeah, you do have kind of like that smell in your hands. I mean, it looked like he was in the middle of prepping, I think is what he was saying. So, like, that's probably more what it was. And then the turf part of my surf and turf would be probably a game animal, like a venison. Just because they're out, like, hunting, basically, for her in the woods. Okay. So those are my...
Gamey.
Yeah, something gamey, something
she's
like
very
you're
lean.
hunting. She's
very fast. Yeah.
So that was kind of my idea. You could also do like they're by a lake, so maybe you could do like a nice trout or something.
They did seem to have pretty fancy food.
Well, Patrick was, I think, part of his programming was that he was a good cook. It seemed like, because even Gizmo mentions that, you should make me a nice omelet.
Oh yeah, that's right. You should make me an omelet for breakfast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. I actually think that fits. It fits this imagery. It was kind of funny because I any fancy eating that I've had is either because I've been with you, and then maybe like a work event before I met you.
Yeah.
And even then, like, a work event would have been like a steakhouse. Like, I think we went to a couple of steakhouses and stuff like that. And like, I didn't like lobster. I never really understood, like the fascination over that.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, you got to drown it in butter. It's like, well, then you're just eating butter. Like, I don't know. It just tasted weird to me. It didn't tasted like much of anything. Or maybe I've just never had good lobster. I don't know. But the only thing I could think of, or the way I would tie this in, is like, it's more so about like the idea of like a first date sort of thing. And so like one of the first times I would have gone out on my own in a date type scenario would have been like when I was a freshman for like homecoming.
Oh, I like that.
And so I would pair this with Olive Garden and
I cannot.
a lasagna for me and my companion. I mean, she would get whatever she would
Are
want.
we making a log of like all the food we talk about?
I'll have to come back around.
I'm kind of curious if you've said Olive Garden before. And
I don't
feel
think
like
so.
we talk about Olive Garden all the time.
I don't. Well,
no, I mean not on the podcast. Just in general, we talk about Olive Garden a weird amount of times in our daily lives.
well,
for some
because
reason.
when you're there, your family.
Oh my god.
And you can you can tour Italy
Yeah, sure.
just like real Italy
Right.
at Olive Garden.
Totally.
Which I could go for some Olive Garden if they're still open. But no, I would, because I want to say like that was the first time I had to get dressed up. I had to have enough money. Like it was all, I was a freshman and the girl that I was dating at the time was like a junior. So she was older than me, and like it was one of those weird sort of like, would you like some fries with that? Kind of, I was very like, didn't know what I was doing. And, it's like, I guess, do I pay like all up front cash or like, do you pull out, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And so like thinking about like, because it
even-
was not a meat cute. I mean, obviously it didn't work out. I mean,
Yeah.
we're, and I mean, she was nice and all, but like, I was like in way over my head, and I think it's on the record that I just never was good with like the ladies, and I definitely was not ready for being with the ladies at like 15 or 16, because I had never had a girlfriend even leading up. That was like the first time ever, so there was no like,
figuring it out, or
right,
whatever.
there was no like, I have a girlfriend,
like in junior high. Or
yeah, in
something
junior
like that.
high, or even like in 6th grade or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, so I didn't know what I was doing, but like I remember that first sort of date only because it was very nerve wracking.
Oh yeah.
More than anything else,
Yeah.
right? But it's funny because like back home when there's not really any fancy restaurants, everybody was at Olive Garden.
I
Like,
mean, honestly,
we were all there in our tuxes and our prom
Yeah.
dresses or homecoming dresses.
No, I mean when I was growing up too, I never went to prom, but I feel like a lot of the kids that did go to prom, like I think a lot of them did go to Olive Garden because that was kind of like semi fancy eating back then, and that was before everybody really like kind of snuck up their noses at chain restaurants.
Yeah.
Like everybody went to chain restaurants back in the day. It's a more recent thing, I think, that now everybody wants to do the neighborhood, locally
Right.
owned restaurant,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
But yeah, back in the day, Olive Garden was like definitely fancy eating. I
Yeah,
think.
I guess so. I guess that's true. It was definitely much more like family back then, whereas now it's more like, I don't know. It's kind of
It's down the
yeah.
street. Let's just go eat
Yeah.
something.
so yeah. For me, Olive Garden.
All right, unlimited
for
breadsticks.
yeah,
Got it.
absolutely. Don't say breadsticks too loud around Hank,
Oh.
because Hank's gonna want his breadsticks. So yeah, I think this was a good one. I think we may circle back around to this one when we talk about our.
Hank's the dog, by the way. I don't know if our listeners know
Oh.
who Hank is. Just some
Hank.
guy hanging around the
Yeah,
house asking for breadsticks.
Hank the dog.
Hank the dog.
He's also the engineer.
Sound engineer, yes.
Yeah. I feel like we'll circle back around to this one when we talk about our favorite movies of 2025. We'll see how the rest of the year
Plays out.
because I definitely added it as a hashtag for this second viewing. I was like, the first one I was like, oh, I'm not sure. Second viewing I was like, yeah, definitely.
You're right. There was a lot more to chew on about it the second time around.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm glad we came back around to it.
Yep. Yeah, it was good. All right. Well, then I think it's going to be time to start getting the plates into the dishwasher. If anybody wants to rate or review us, we'd be oh so kind if you could do that on whatever platform you're listening to. You can follow us on Instagram, Top Shelf Video TX, which is the same as us. We're the appetizer slash dessert.
And both?
We're the things around. Yeah, we're the
Things around the main course.
around the main course.
Got it.
And but yeah, you can also email us at topshelfvideopodcast@gmail.com if you have suggestions or ideas. If you'd like to hear more about
suggestions for more movies.
more movies. You and I have a list on the whiteboard. We can scratch this one off.
Yeah.
I think it will be interesting to for some of these other ones because there are a couple on there that I have not seen. There are a couple that you have not seen. There goes the engineer.
There goes Hank looking for breadsticks.
He's gonna head out the room to go look for breadsticks, like you said. We'd love to get recommendations, but we'll see. Maybe we'll have some stories when we come back from Mexico City here soon. Maybe we'll bring back some spices or something to to throw in a little something here down the road. But well, all right. I guess if you want to buy the kitchen staff a round of drinks, and
don't forget to tip your server.
And we'll see everybody next time.
Okay. Bye.
Love you.
Love you too.